Hey everybody, welcome to From the Logo, where we're here to talk about the Blazers and the NBA at large a little bit. It's an interesting day in the NBA today. There was a little bit of drama going on with the NBA's favorite drama queen, LeBron James, as he talked some smack about Michael Jordan, talked some smack about his best friend, Wendy, and then went on to almost break his record of scoring 10 points in every game for the last like 15 years, and then hit a game-winning tip-in. Colton, do you want to talk about LeBron before we move on to the Blazers?
Yeah, he had a scathing, how do I summarize it? I kind of summarized it a little bit before we started talking, but live here. He basically said that Wendy is weird for basically insinuating that he's been buddy-buddy with him since high school. Because Wendy always does this thing where he reads in extra to how LeBron's actually feeling based on what LeBron says. So he tries to be like the LeBron whisperer, where LeBron says, "We played like crap tonight," and then Brian Windhorst is trying to basically decode that into saying LeBron wants to trade everyone. Like, and then he's like, "Yeah, I've known him since high school, so you better listen to me. I've covered him since high school. I'm his, I know him." And then LeBron basically was like, this guy's pretty weird." That's like the summary of it. And then yeah, he said a lot of stuff today. He's talking about like Pat Riley, he's talking about Michael Jordan, how Michael Jordan basically doesn't want to talk to him. Michael Jordan said, "Hey, come back when you retire, buddy. Maybe, maybe." And then he talked about a lot of stuff. And then at halftime, like Riley said, was not doing well, but then he hit a buzzer beater. So all is forgiven in LeBron land. But then Stephen A. Smith, one more thing on LeBron, because Kirby, you'll like this. You're our Stephen A. Smith expert. Stephen A. Smith came out and said when LeBron confronted Stephen A. Smith earlier in the season on the court, if LeBron would have put his hands on Stephen A. Smith would have, and I quote, came out swinging. Kirby, what do you think about that quote from Stephen A. Smith?
That's definitely going to be like an undercard fight in the next Logan Jake Paul boxing match, please. That would be a big money fight in those pro wrestling boxing matches they're doing. The whole thing makes me wonder where, like, what the future of the sports media is going to look like. I mean, we are all sports journalists here at From the Logo doing and there's, thousands more like us on YouTube, kind of doing their own thing. Um, a lot of us parroting the stuff that we hear on ESPN, some coming up with their own unique takes or different way of doing it. But the play, and then you got the players themselves as well, the Draymond Green show and the Paul George show, and everyone, all the players are kind of doing their own media thing. So it makes me want, and then there's also this kind of contention between the players and the journalists, like LeBron with Stephen A. and Wendy, and I don't know. It'll be interesting. I wonder if it'll come to a head at any point, and these journalists will. The players just have so much power. You wonder if eventually they'll kind of maybe cut off some of the access or limit some of the access of the journalists, even though those TV reporters and analysts have really brought more eyes, more attention onto the league, and probably raised the income of those guys. At a certain point, they can probably be like, all right, enough peeping into every aspect of our lives. Like we can do it ourselves on YouTube or podcasts or whatever. Or if it'll just continue down this track for a while and this like kind of contentious relationship will continue to grow and it'll just bring more eyes to the product because it is interesting to see them get all pissed at each other. I wonder what, and then ESPN is just sort of homogenizing into one thing. They don't really have like different shows at this point. You turn it on and it's pretty much the same black woman, on Sports Center talking about LeBron or Steph or I don't know who the Otani, I guess if it's baseball or who's Aaron Rodgers going to in his darkness retreat? So I don't know if there will be like a direction that it goes, or if it's just going to continue to be this for the foreseeable future.
They're definitely, if they are going to make a change, it's going to come at the expense of a lot of negotiation because I know it's like in all the collective bargaining agreements that they have to do a lot of media access. Because, yeah, as of right now, I think it's probably baked into the TV deals. The TV deals are still where the mo most money comes from, and those TV stations want their reporters to be able to interview them. Yeah, it is interesting to see what's happening at ESPN. You know, they're getting rid of Around the Horn. There's been some talk that PTI might be next on the chopping block. And like, I mean, I don't know exactly what, how high the value of those shows has been over the last few years, but the fact that we are just going to just one continuous, stand and talk kind of show that's like used to be called Sports Center. Now it's a mix of like whatever they call it, inside the NBA, inside the NFL. I guess it's not inside, that's TNT, but whatever they call it. There's the NBA show, there's the NFL show, NFL Live, and then they just go into Sports Center, and it's all in the same studio, and it's all made really cheap. And that's just kind of what ESPN has become as they've become more and more Disneyfied. But yeah, it is definitely an interesting relationship between the media and the NBA because they would not be where they are if not for the media. There's no way, but the media is changing so fast that there might not be a lot of room for these reporters who make their career about following the guys for a whole lot longer, especially if the guys want to just go on and make their own shows.
Well, I think you've already summarized where it's going. We've already summarized where it's going. We're a part of it. It is I guess a couple different things. It's hot take artists. That's all ESPN is, right? Who can bluster the loudest? And this is kind of inside the NBA too. Who can just say the most random stuff? And it doesn't really matter. Sometimes there's those analysts that break through, right? And they will break down the game. Tim Legler, shout out. If you watch the game, like he will actually break it down. Um, Sometimes like you can still be funny and break the game down. Like sometimes Richard Jefferson gets on like a rant, but then he'll like break the game down. Like so there's guys that'll do it and they'll get on their rants, but then they'll break the game down. But then there's some guys like Kendrick Perkins, Stephen A. Smith, guys that just keep saying, I don't watch this sport. I don't watch this sport. Everybody that's playing now sucks. I don't watch this sport. Guys like Shaquille O'Neal. So here's the thing. You run a segment on your big show called Who He Play For. Your analysts on your show are publicizing that you don't know what team the guys that you're supposed to be paid to like commentate on don't know what team they play on. Like I get that they're like bench players, but like you're advertising like it's a funny thing that you don't know the sport you're watching, what you're talking about. That's what I'm saying. It's just funny, like it's all funny, but it's all content, and that's what it is. So that's the direction it's going, and that it's all people standing on a set saying stuff. Stephen A. Smith, I would fight LeBron. Okay. So we've gone from highlights of people dunking to Stephen A. Smith saying I would fight LeBron. That's what it's becoming. It's stupid. It's stupid. So we need to be more analytical. So let's talk analytics. Let's talk building blocks, so to speak. Let's go to the Blazers, for example. Okay. When we're talking, let's talk
This is
about
definitely
players.
not a hot take. It's analytics right
Let's talk
there.
about players instead. Let's talk about players we know are on teams. Let's talk about the future of a certain team that we like. Okay. ESPN, some journalists talk about the sport. ESPN had an article today, okay? And it was talking about like upcoming potential stars of the future. It's called the Way Too Early Breakout Stars of the Future. So, who was number one on this list, you say? I'm not going to leave the suspense in the air forever. I'm just going to say it. Toumani Camara, number one on the two early breakout stars. That was ahead of guys like Amin Thompson, Ivy, Jaden Ivy, Quentin Grimes, Tyson Daniels. So some big names on the list. Um, that is
Not to
some,
undermine your whole point, but don't you think that's kind of a hot take? That's like borderline hot take.
I don't know. Here's the thing. Toumani Camara has been getting some national recognition for defensive, like not defensive player of the year, but all defensive teams, right? Um, he won Western Conference Defensive Player of the Month last month. So I don't think that's like a pat on the back award or anything. He's a rookie or
Second year. Second
second.
year.
Yeah. So he's second year player. That's a pretty, I mean, I know it's a new like award and it's only 1 month, but that's a pretty big deal. Defensive end is important. He's been improving offensively, right? I would say that he's just getting the respect of peers out there. Maybe number one, I get what you're saying, but I think he might deserve to be on the list.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's just the whole thing. Again, I know we're trying to move on from the sports media thing, but the whole idea of like a top 10 list of players who are going to break out is sort of hot takey to me a little bit. But I think he definitely has a case for being on there pretty high. I like how the NBA the last couple seasons has shifted back to defense. It was like we grew up on Detroit basketball, the defense and the low scoring games and everything. And it's not necessarily low scoring anymore, but there's a lot more emphasis on defense than there has been, like maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when it was all about the Splash Bros and, hitting a lot of tough shots and stuff. It's like looking at the Thunder, looking at the Rockets, looking at the Blazers, three young teams that really defend at a high level, that win games because of their defense. That's been kind of fun. That's one thing I like about this Blazers team that's got me excited for the future is the fact that they defend so well. They have, like kind of that classic switchable rotation that we've been asking for the last 10 years or so. Outside of Anthony Simons, there's really anybody can defend any position, and that is fun to watch because just think of what defense translates to, fast break opportunities, drive and spray out for 3-point shooters, big dunks, Shaden Sharp getting downhill on a semi-fast break. It just brings a lot of excitement to the team, I think.
I think maybe this is actually a good advertisement for why there's still some utility for NBA journalists because I think if you look at like last year's predictions when they were talking about who is maybe going to break out this year, their hit rate is not bad. It's guys like Evan Mobley, it's guys like Jalen Williams, it's guys like Ben Mathurin. Guys who have had pretty good years, and some guys who maybe weren't necessarily the first person that you would have thought of from last year's draft class either. So yeah, I mean, I think that there's something to that. I think that these are guys who obviously watch every team in the league, and pay attention to things. And if you're paying attention to things, I think you can see that Toumani is on the upswing and has some real potential to be a game changer as an anchor for the team. I love watching him play defense. I mean, it's a lot of fun seeing somebody with that kind of just ability, quickness, length. It looks like a defensive prototype for sure when he's out there. And I also don't mind, him on offense either. I trust him to kind of spread out and not necessarily get in the way. Obviously, he's not like initiating a lot of offense or anything at this point, but yeah, I mean, I
He's
think
a
he could
better
be.
corner.
Did we lose Kirby?
So over his last 10 games, he's averaging 13 points per game on almost 40% from three, 39% from three, probably low attempts, but 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and over a block and over a steal a game. Plus, great defense, taking charges, guarding the best player on the floor and usually holding them to a tough night. And that's his second year. I mean, I know he's an older rookie, but that's good already. Imagine if you up the points per game a little bit, add any kind of a tool to the wheelhouse there. Like that's a good, really good player. Like even if he's just 3 and D with rebounding, but he's positional, he can switch on D. I mean, if he adds anything, watch out because he's already pretty well rounded. That's pretty good stuff right there. That's just his last 10 games. He's had a good season throughout. But the other thing I wanted to touch on really quick, the other forward long term, it seems like, is Denny Advia, right? And Denny is taking kind of the league by storm. Right now, the media is giving him credit. Denny's last, or over the last 10 games, Denny's last, I guess, last eight played games, right? 24 points per game, like basically a steal per game, half a block, 5 assists, almost 11 boards, 53% from three, 54% from the field. Uh, and if you watch the games, okay, the dude is a force out there. I want to remind everybody, as I will every single time we talk about this guy, his contract's going down. In 2027, I believe he's going to be making like $12.5 million. Yes, that's a ton of money, right? But not in NBA terms. That's nothing.
That might be looking at a renegotiation here pretty soon. If we want to keep him longer than that, we may end up paying him more in the short term. But
He could be an all-star, like a anchor of the team. Like I want to ask you guys, I'll just pose the question. So has the core of the team gone from like say Scoot Shaden or Simons to Toumani and Denny? Is that the actual core future? I mean, they're all included in some way with Kling in there as well. They're all part of it, I think. But are they like the two people to build around those two forwards now? Is that what's going on?
I mean, I have hope that especially Shaden is going to have a big breakout, another breakout year next year too. I need to see him continue to improve because his abilities, his ceiling just seems like it's like the highest on the team. And so I hope that this is his team someday. But yeah, in terms of who we're building around, I mean, I have hope for Scoot too. But I don't necessarily think he's like a bust or anything. He's still developing and he's young, and I think he's playing pretty well this year. But yeah, in terms of who you build around and who you're trying to slot guys around, I mean, it wouldn't upset me if we were building around two talented wings, or two talented forwards. That's often a good place to start. And hopefully it turns out that we already have a lot of those pieces in place as everybody continues to develop.
The real difference between the forwards and the guards for me is the depth chart. Jeremy's been out, and so it's really allowed Denny and Toumani to shine, I think, and really show that they are the future forwards. The guard situation is still a log jam. It's been a log jam for as long as I can remember, and it still is. Having those three guys play for two spots just really isn't allowing any of them to be comfortable in their position, to know exactly what the
Yeah.
team is asking from them, to be consistent, every night, go out there and they know they're going to be the starter. They know they're going to have to do this and that on both sides of the ball. They know they're going to have to carry the offensive load. They know they're going to have to hit big shots. They know they're going to have to have the ball in their hands when the game's on the line. And I think right now it's just with that three-headed thing they got going on down there. That's what's really slowing up you know, why it doesn't look like they're going to be able to build around one of the guards right now. But I think once that situation is cleared up, then I think it's the four. I think it could potentially the five-man lineup is right there. The two guards, the two forwards, and the center.
I agree with you. Let me pose a fun scenario for you guys because I can kind of see it. Joe, I can see it. I can see what you're doing here. I've been with you most of the way here. Um, So, yeah, I mean, let's just say the five-man lineup is there. My preference, and I've said this, would be the five-man lineup going into next season would be to have Scoot and Shaden and Denny and Toumani and Donovan Clingan, Aiton maybe for one more season as Donovan continues to get ready for the NBA long term, right? Donovan had one of his best games of the season last game against Cleveland, by the way. Played 32 minutes, led the team in scoring, and had 12 rebounds and three blocks. So just shout out, by the way. But I just want to make a fun, and he hit two threes, two out of three. I just want to make one little fun scenario for you guys. Let's say the Blazers have that lineup, or even Anthony instead of Scoot. Let's just say they have five-man lineup that we're pretty happy with going forward, right? But they win the number one overall pick in this year's draft. It's just they hawk it, right? They hawk Tua, okay? They get the right to draft Cooper Flag. What do they do?
Draft Cooper Flag.
Well, I know they draft Cooper Flag, but then what do they do?
Then you have the log jam at the forward position.
Yep.
They wouldn't even trade Jeremy at that point. They still have him in there.
Yeah.
Like,
They'd
you'd
say,
have
Cooper,
Cooper.
you're coming off the bench just like Scoot did. There
Cooper
you
would be like
go.
number 4 in the depth chart
Yeah.
for small forwards,
You
and
get 10 minutes a game. Yeah.
they'd really tease him along and like, maybe next year he'll be the starter, but this year we're going with Jeremy again because
What
he's
would
the
you guys do though? What would you try and start Cooper Flag? You'd probably have to start Cooper Flag, right?
If we take him number one in the draft, I would. Yeah, yeah.
Who
I
would you
mean,
bench?
probably
Toumani?
Denny.
yeah, yeah. Well,
I
honestly,
would
either
probably
one of them. I mean, it would, definitely getting rid of Jeremy at that point. Then yeah, I mean, you'd start him, and I'd probably rather start him and Denny, I guess, to start, and bench Toumani for next year, and then just see how it goes.
I think yeah, I think you just see what it looks like, give both lineups a try. But man, this is sounding awfully familiar to the situation that they're in right now at the guard position.
I
But
mean, it would be a great thing to have.
when that does happen, yeah, it's a embarrassment of riches. I don't think it would be that annoying to have that situation. And at least all three of those guys can play defense.
It would be super exciting and fun. I'm not like saying this is a positive like what if, obviously. This is a positive future, right? Because this is gonna happen.
When it does happen.
Even adding Ace Bailey, like if you're number two overall, or you could add one of those talent, Dylan Harper, right? Then you're adding another guard. Um, but it just is would be so interesting that you'd have that logjam situation again. I mean, you'd be adding to your depth one way or the other, but
One thing, look at how the Thunder have been dealing with their depth issues. It doesn't seem like it's that much of an issue. They got like 8 to 10 players deep, and they just kind of like rotate them in. It seems like they start two different guys almost every night. They have Wiggins out there and Joe out there and
they're not
Wallace out
drafting
there
number one overall with that pick. What if those Clippers picks start hitting number one overall? Those guys expect bigger roles coming in.
potentially. Although going to a team that's like an NBA championship contender already. I don't know, maybe some of those guys would be willing to take a smaller role, or they could package up a few of them and go make a big swing. Although we talked about this last week, kind of, I don't really know what big swing would actually improve their team. They're 60-12 right now, but uh, you know, I honestly think, yeah, the the issue really is not to just go back to it every time, but is like if Simons was an elite defensive player as well as offensive player, then it wouldn't be such a it wouldn't be such an issue. They could probably rotate those guys in a little smoother. And also just his style of play is just his only effective weapon is like shooting 20-25 times a game, and that really limits the other guards' abilities to be effective on the offensive end. So that's a big part of it, I think. And if you have like three guys like Denny, Toumani, and Flag who can impact the game in like, you know, five, six, seven different ways, it's a little bit less of an issue. The log jam becomes more of like, look at all these weapons that they have.
It is interesting going back kind of to the original question of who are we building around, because another way to look at that is if we did hit like a top three pick or, a really high pick and we basically had our choice, what roles would we feel most comfortable drafting just most talents available, best available? Like, would we take just anybody who's the best available, or would we take,
You
would we
better.
take any forward who's the best available? Would we take any guard who's the best available? Who's proven themselves to be like a sort of immovable piece in our starting lineup? And like thinking about that, for one thing, I don't know if anybody really has, but I think the first person I'd think of is Denny. I'd really hope that we could keep him, and at
Funny,
least
sorry, continue.
if I'd hope that we could at least keep him in the starting lineup. But I mean, I don't really feel like Scoot or Shaden have proven themselves to be like completely untouchable, irreplaceable, and I don't really feel that way at center either. And that's not Donovan's fault. This is just his first year, and he's not really getting the bulk of the minutes because of the Aiton situation. And Toumani is kind of borderline for me, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
I think I agree with you that like yeah, I don't really know if any of if you're getting a guaranteed bona fide all-star, then bench basically any of them for that player. But my kind of number one leaning rather than Denny would be Toumani, and that goes to show really the basis of our question here, like who is the maybe the most kind of solid pillar that the Blazers have right now. In my opinion, I think because of the defense and just the consistency, he's there every single night, averaging like the most minutes on the team. Very solid when he's out there. It's like just there's no question about it that, I think that Toumani is that guy. Probably number two would be Denny, though, I suppose.
So let me ask you this really quick. I know we're about to run out of time. Would you consider, if you get flag, shifting Toumani to just a jumbo two and running with a point guard?
I kind of feel like that's what he is.
I- I'm just saying. You said you would bench Toumani, but what about benching just Shaden and just kicking
No,
Shaden?
I never said bench Toumani. I said bench Denny. But
Oh,
I think that he kind of is a two, honestly. He usually that's usually who he defends is, kind of the other team's scorer, whether that be a guy like, a 6'10" scorer or a 6'6" scorer, but kind of that shooting guard position. I think he fits pretty well in there, and he's quick enough on both sides of the ball to really play that position. So yeah, I could see that sliding down. And then you got three guards fighting for one spot.
I'd definitely give it a try and see how that worked out. See if Toumani could consistently guard, every two in the league, because twos are not all made equal. Some of them are basically power forwards, and some of them are basically point guards. So you
Then
have
you
to
got Cooper down there at the hoop protecting the rim for anyone that blows by Toumani.
Cooper and
Not a
Donovan
bad,
together. That could
yeah.
not be bad. That could not be bad.
make it happen, Adam.
Make it happen, Joe. Make it happen,
Make
ping
it
pong
happen,
balls
Joe.
and Joe.
All right. Thank you all for watching. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on From the Logo.
Bye.